RightCapital's education funding analysis, found within the education module of each client plan, pulls in education costs for all members of the client household and allows you to individually tailor an education funding strategy for each one. In this way, you can help clients feel confident that they'll be able to fully fund the education goals within their financial plans. In this training video, we'll review each of the subtabs within the education module, how you can use the action items to dial in an education funding proposal, and ultimately how you can import that proposal into the broader context of a client's future-looking retirement projections. Before we get started, an important note. The cash flow details used within the education module will be based on the original proposed plan in the retirement analysis area. Please be aware that any changes made to the proposed plan within the action items may impact the information displayed within the education funding analysis. Navigating back to the education module, the first thing you'll notice here is that a tab will be displayed for any individual that has an education goal entered within the financial plan. This can include the client or co-client, children, grandchildren, and even other family members. Within each of these student tabs, you'll find the projected education costs in future dollars for that individual, along with clean visuals showcasing the percentage of those costs that are currently funded. The bar chart on the left will highlight the annual education costs for each student. As a reminder, education costs increase on an annual basis using your education cost inflation rate. The pie chart to the right highlights the overall goal coverage percentage, as well as any funding shortfall. If there are multiple education goals entered for a single individual, such as a pre-college goal from age 14 to 17, followed by a college goal from age 18 to 21, each of those goals will be included in the analysis for that student. When it comes to the projected education costs, these charts will illustrate the costs reflected in the goals section of the profile within any pre-college or college goal data cards. For more information on the data entry process for pre-college and college goals, you can search education goals within our Help Center. You may also notice when looking at the education module that a percentage of a student's education goal is already being funded, even prior to dialing in a funding strategy using the action items. This can occur if there are existing 529 assets within the plan, including 529 accounts entered into the profile net worth section, and 529 savings entered into the profile savings area. Do note that the 529 accounts bucket in RightCapital encompasses all education savings accounts, including UTMA, UGMA, and Coverdell accounts. These account types are seen as 529s by the education analysis. One last pro tip related to 529s. When using 529 accounts to fund pre-college goals in particular, annual distributions will be capped at $10,000 per year due to the Secure Act. You can determine whether or not 529s will be used to fund pre-college goals by navigating to the gear icon, Settings, Methodology tab, and checking or unchecking the setting labeled Use 529 accounts to fund pre-college education goals. With all of this in mind, let's navigate back to the education module and start looking over action item functionality. The action items are your opportunity to dial in an education funding proposal for your clients. These variables are specific to each student, allowing you to make adjustments to education costs, 529 contributions, funding sources, and more. In the left-hand column, you'll first see each education goal for that individual listed in order. The annual education cost, scholarship, and student borrowing values will be pulled in from the data cards in the Profile Goals tab. You can manipulate these variables to demonstrate the impact of varying tuition costs, scholarships, grants, and student borrowing on a student's overall cost analysis. Please be aware that the scholarship/other and student borrowing fields will reduce the annual amount of that student's education goal rather than the total projected education cost. As you make changes to these variables, you can see the impact on the annual net cost even before clicking the refresh button. Beneath the education goals, you'll see information regarding the 529 assets in the plan with this student listed as the beneficiary. The current 529 balance will reflect the total value of all education savings accounts entered within the profile net worth. And the annual 529 savings section will list the value associated with any 529 savings cards entered within the profile savings area. You'll also see two additional options for illustrating additional savings. Lump sum saving will allow you to model a one-time lump sum amount saved to a 529 plan for that student. The amount that you enter here is assumed to be invested in the 529 immediately. Additional annual 529 saving allows you to show an additional annual amount that will be saved each year. These savings will occur from the current year through the first year of the student's education goal. By manipulating existing 529 contributions and modeling additional 529 savings, you can fine-tune a student's education funding proposal to achieve the exact amount of goal coverage that your clients are looking for. One last note before moving on. It's important to remember that the education module is based on the comprehensive cash flow data from the proposed plan and the retirement analysis. If you're making changes to the 529 savings here and not seeing an impact on the chart, it may be due to cash flow deficits that are occurring within the proposed plan. If this is the case, you can resolve this issue by navigating to the gear icon, Settings, Methodology tab, and checking the setting labeled Use Taxable Accounts to Fund IRA and 529 Savings when current year cash flows are inadequate. Back in the Education module, we have one last section of the action items to review. Within the Strategy column on the right-hand side, you'll find two more options to round out your education funding proposal. The 529 asset allocation strategy determines how the funds invested in that student's 529 plan are allocated. This will affect the annual portfolio return generated within the 529 moving forward. If current allocation is used, we'll use the asset allocation associated with all 529 accounts in the client's profile where the student is the beneficiary. If this student doesn't have any 529 accounts, we'll use the asset allocation for the proposed plan in the retirement analysis module. Within the drop-down menu, you can choose from a list of model portfolios. Here you'll find RightCapital's 7 default models, in addition to any custom models that you've created. As a reminder, you can view existing and create custom model portfolios within the Models Portfolios tab of the Advisor portal. The funding sources strategy determines which assets are used to fund the education costs for this student, and in what order. The main thing to remember here is that if the funding sources you choose have insufficient assets, the remainder of the student's education costs will not be funded. You can find more detailed information on each of the funding source options within the Education Analysis module overview in our Help Center. After dialing in your education funding proposal, the Details tab is where you can take a closer look at the mechanics of what's happening as a result of your strategy. Here, you'll find two separate cash flow tables that allow you to review the numbers behind the projections. Using the first drop-down menu above the chart, you can choose between viewing the education cost summary and the 529 summary. Using the second drop-down menu, you can choose which student you'd like to view. The Education Cost Summary table provides additional cash flow details on education costs and funding. This table can be a useful backdrop for talking points such as the impact of scholarships and student borrowing on a student's education costs, how much of a student's education is funded with 529 assets versus other sources, as well as any shortfalls that may occur if the selected funding sources are insufficient. The 529 summary table tracks beginning and ending 529 balances each year, in addition to portfolio return, savings, and withdrawals once education costs begin. This table will only reflect 529 assets where the specified student is the beneficiary. Using this table, you can highlight the impact of a change in 529 asset allocation on the portfolio return, visualize lump sum and additional annual 529 savings that have been entered via the action items, and identify if a student's 529 accounts are being over or underfunded within the projections. Once your clients are satisfied with the education funding proposal you've designed for them in the Education module, you can then choose to instantly reflect this strategy within the broader context of a client's retirement projections. To apply an education proposal, visit the Retirement Analysis module and scroll down to the action items at the bottom of the screen. On the right side of the action items, isolate the Education Strategy dropdown and choose the Education Proposal option. Once you click Refresh in the lower right, details from the education module will flow into the proposed plan. You can then analyze the impact of the education funding proposal on the client's overall probability of success, median ending invested assets, and future-looking cash flow projections. For more information on RightCapital's education funding analysis tool, please don't hesitate to take a look over the educational resources within the RightCapital Help Center, or to reach out to our dedicated advisor support team for additional details.